My name is Daniel Branco. I'm a neurologist and neuroscientist, and I've spent my life pursuing a deeper understanding of consciousness. And this is a conversation about high consciousness and about the nature of reality. This specific video was inspired by a question left by Andrea in the comments of the Portuguese version of the video Imagination is More Real Than Reality. I'll leave the link in the description for the English version. And her question was roughly the following: what is the difference between physical reality, spiritual reality, and consciousness? She also mentioned that reality only exists when it is perceived or experienced by consciousness. It's a short but profound question, full of layers. To begin with, I agree that reality only exists when it is perceived by consciousness. But I would reframe that because that sentence creates a circular point. See, if reality only exists when it is observed, how could it be observed if it doesn't exist in the first place? Well, maybe the nature of reality is indeed circular, but there is another way to phrase this same idea, and that in a way that makes slightly more sense, which is to say that reality is created when it is observed. But even that carries a bit of circularity because as humans, we have a very clear sense of time. Generally, you're not supposed to observe something that hasn't been created yet. But in some ways, you can observe something while it is being created in real time. Sometimes we don't quite know what we are looking at while something or some idea is being created. But when we look back, then it makes sense. That's exactly how things unfold as I wrote this script. That's exactly how they unfolded. I didn't know exactly where it'll take me when I started writing this script for this video. But as I began writing, the script began revealing itself. And the video ended up quite different from what I had originally imagined. And that is what consciousness does all the time. It creates reality in real time. Just as the universe is always expanding and perhaps creating new realities in the process, consciousness is always creating. It is impossible for consciousness not to create reality because creating reality is part of its nature. And as it creates realities, it automatically experiences the reality it is creating. So instead of saying that reality only exists when it is perceived, which implies that reality is already out there waiting to be observed and created, the high consciousness philosophy states that consciousness is the only thing with fundamental existence, the only thing that does not need to be created. According to the high consciousness philosophy, consciousness exists outside space and outside time. Consciousness is what creates space and creates time. Therefore, consciousness is what created the universe. This entire 3D space plus time is a creation by consciousness. But that idea doesn't come without problems either, because it seems counterintuitive to think that each one of us created our entire physical reality from consciousness. It seems obvious that there was already a physical universe before we were born, a universe that our individual consciousness did not create. Otherwise, how could we have been born in the first place? At the same time, we know that we are reality creators. We create our lives all the time. We make decisions that instantly change our lives and create new realities for ourselves. And we do so in a non deterministic way, as I discussed in the video, What is Consciousness? I'll leave the link here in the description too. Because we are beings with agency. We have agency, which is another way to say that we have free will. So, yes, reality only exists when it is perceived by consciousness. But phrased even better, reality is created when it is observed. Or better yet, consciousness observes reality as it creates it in real time. By observing the created reality, consciousness continues to create it endlessly, like an ever expanding universe, which is exactly what we observe. Our universe is always expanding, our physical universe. In the high consciousness philosophy, the physical universe that already existed when we were born is the prior creation of a consciousness greater than our individual consciousness. And when we enter that creation at birth, we keep creating new realities on top of the original creation, like a fractal. Fractals of consciousness adding themselves to the original creation to collaborate with it and refine it. Because we share the same creation abilities as the source consciousness, this larger consciousness. The only difference is that our individual consciousness has a more limited range. Even so, it is part of the greater consciousness that came before. In consciousness, all is one. And because consciousness is primary, the only thing that with intrinsic unconditional existence, our consciousness is not created by the brain. Our consciousness is one with the broader consciousness that created the universe, a single thing. The same is true of the consciousness of a lizard, a fly, perhaps even a rock, or the entire planet. Beings or things that manifest consciousness are simply different expressions of one single fundamental primary consciousness. If AI, for example, begins to display signs of agency and free will, that may be because consciousness has found a way to manifest through it. As if certain physical structures are more prone to serve as agents of consciousness in the physical world than others. Which brings us to the second part of Andrea's question. What is the difference between physical reality, spiritual reality, and consciousness? And one way to answer this is through the title of the video. Do you play with toys or do toys play with you? Uh, think of a toy on the floor. It could be a toy car or a doll. It doesn't matter. The toy is there still. It is 100% obeying the laws of physics. If an earthquake occurs, the toy will move around in a completely physics compatible way. But as soon as a child walks into the room, everything changes for the toy. The child, who is a conscious being, is not governed by the same laws of physics. The child's body is, but the child as consciousness is not. And because she exists in consciousness, the child has free will. There is absolutely no law of physics that can predict what will happen in the next few seconds. At best, we can generate statistics about what might happen, about what that child might do. But we fundamentally cannot know. It's not because we don't know all the variables of the child toy system. It's because the child, as a conscious being, is creating her reality in real time. Within the physical limits of the child's body, anything can happen. She won't be able to throw the toy into outer space, for example, because that's beyond the physical body's capabilities. But inside that room, literally anything can happen. No physical law can predict what comes next. And why do I bring this example? Because it makes very clear the meeting of two types of reality and the intersection between the two, the physical reality and the spiritual reality. And why do I call it spiritual reality instead of consciousness? Essentially, because that's what Andrea asked. She asked what the difference was between spiritual reality and reality in consciousness. And the high consciousness philosophy's answer is none. There is absolutely no difference between spiritual and consciousness. We are spiritual beings simply because we are conscious beings. That's it. If you think spirit is something supernatural or woo, then you are supernatural and woo because you are conscious. And consciousness is woo because it is magical. Consciousness should not exist. And in fact, it does not exist to science. So before you call anything woo, remember, nothing is more woo than yourself. You are the ultimate woo because you are a conscious being who creates realities, like the child in the example I just gave. Returning then to the child and the toy. The toy exists within physical reality. And physical reality, per the high consciousness philosophy, was created and exists within source consciousness, a consciousness greater than our individual one. But that doesn't matter here. Let's assume physical reality has intrinsic existence, but so does consciousness. So, if both physical and consciousness reality exist, how then do they interact? Well, the child toy example gives us the first clue. The toy is hopeless, it has no agency and no will. The child outranks it in the hierarchy. Whatever the child wants to do with the toy, she will, because consciousness is superior to matter, is senior to matter. Matter is powerless, and consciousness has seniority over matter. All matter can do is obey the laws of physics, but consciousness does not. Consciousness is limitless. It can do whatever it wants with a toy. Within the limitations of the physical body, it is using as an instrument. Therefore, if you compare the toy's options with the child's options acting through a physical body, the child still has infinitely more possibilities. The toy has none. Consciousness is sovereign. Matter is nothing. Matter is a construct created by consciousness to facilitate consciousness's ability to experience itself. Physical reality is a playground for consciousness. And we are the children spending our day there and having fun. The difference, therefore, between physical reality and consciousness is that physical reality is powerless and predictable. That's where science thrives. Science can go in, measure everything, and describe the laws governing the behavior of matter. But matter remains powerless. It can only be matter. Reality in consciousness, on the other hand, is unlimited and unpredictable. Consciousness, when expressing itself through a physical system, is what makes that system less predictable. Think, for example, of medicine and drug development. In today's materialistic view, drugs follow deterministic rules, but they have different effects in different people. Science says that this happens because of biological and genetic differences. But that doesn't explain the placebo effect. What the high consciousness philosophy suggests is that a large part of the differences in drug efficacy or safety across people is due to the fact that those bodies are physical systems that manifest consciousness. They do not create consciousness, they serve consciousness. They are puppets of consciousness. And because consciousness is sovereign, consciousness has far more influence over what happens to our bodies than science is willing to admit. Therefore, the body of each conscious being will respond to medications and stimuli in slightly different ways, depending on the consciousness that inhabits and uses that body. While I hope this video has explained, at least in part, the difference between physical reality and reality in consciousness, and spiritual reality, which is the same as consciousness. The fact that we cannot properly measure physical systems used by consciousness, like our own bodies, should already be an indication that objective reality is incomplete, that certain aspects of reality simply cannot be measured. The greater the interaction of systems with consciousness, the less measurable those systems become. To the point that when it comes to pure consciousness, it simply cannot be measured at all. As in the example of pain I used in the video, Science Can't Tell You Everything. I'll leave the link in the description as well. So, what do you think of those ideas? Do they make sense to you? Leave your questions and comments below, and I'll love to answer them. And if you want to dive deeper, explore my book, Spirituality Spiritual Initiation for Rational People. And don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. We are still a very young channel, and your support really matters and is really appreciated. Let's improve the experience of life for everyone on this planet. See you in the next one.